So we've gone live pleasantly in all different time zones today. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Angana Bose, and I am a researcher and a project assistant at TMYS. I welcome you to the stories of tribal identity and culture that will explore the role of tribal literature and tribal representation in literature in shaping cultural identity and ideology, curated under the TMYS Review June 2024 in collaboration with the Center for Asia Pacific Initiatives, University of Victoria. We are also calling for submission of essays, poems, and short stories under the project. To know more about the submission guidelines and the project architecture, please visit www.tellmeastory.biz. This afternoon, I consider myself very privileged to be in the company of our esteemed panelists, Dr. George Jennings, Dr. James Hamilton, Dr. Shaktipada Kumar, and Dr. Ramakrishna Biswal, who will lay bare their views and insights with us. The topic for today's discussion is ethnography of martial arts, traditions and rituals of the tribe under the sub-theme tribal art. So before we take the plunge and dive straight in, I'd like to introduce our speakers without further ado. Our first speaker for the session is Dr. George Jennings. Dr. George Jennings is a senior lecturer in sports sociology at Cardiff Metropolitan University, where he leads the MA Sport Ethics and Society course alongside the MRE's Pathway Critical Social Science. His martial arts research began in his undergraduate dissertation, and his publications since 2008 largely stem from the ethnographies of Wing Chun, Taijiquan, Zilam, and the historical European martial arts. So we are delighted to have you on the panel, sir. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Angana. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Right. So moving ahead, next up is our second speaker for the session, Dr. James Hamilton. Dr. James Hamilton.
Excuse me, it's Mark James Hamilton.
Okay, right. Yes, sir. So Dr. Mark James Hamilton is trained in Bharatnatyam and Kalaripayattu. He was the performance coach for Toro Toro, a Maori dance troupe, for 4 years. His doctorate explored the interface of martial arts and dance in the work of companies from New Zealand, Kerala, and China. In the course of his doctoral studies, Mark James Hamilton trained in Tai Chi, Judo, and Capoeira. That's a Brazilian movement art. So it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the panel, sir. Thank you for joining us this evening.
It's my pleasure.
Our third speaker for the session is Dr. Shaktipada Kumar. Dr. Shaktipada Kumar teaches at the Department of English, Coach Bihar Panchanan Burma University, West Bengal. A folk singer and director of a Chhou dance troupe in Purulia, Dr. Kumar is known for his extensive research work in the field of Chhou dance performance of Purulia, West Bengal. His research is on the memocultural Chhou responses to the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. So we are honored to have you on the panel, sir. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. We also have Dr. Ramakrishna Biswal as one of our esteemed panelists. He is an associate professor in the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences. Apart from his specialization in psychology and allied sciences, he has successfully completed research projects in tribal development-related issues. His research areas include, but isn't limited to, developmental psychology, ethical engineering, and sustainable development. Apart from teaching and research, Dr. Biswal is active in social services and volunteering activities like blood donation, counseling people for their psychological issues, teaching the underprivileged children, and conducting awareness sessions on health, education, livelihood, and skill development for the rural and urban populace. We are indeed privileged to have you on the panel, sir. Thank you for joining today.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you, sir. Now let's move to the heart of the forum and open it for discussion. I would request Dr. George Jennings to share his insights. So over to you now.
Yeah, thank you, Angana. Well, to be honest, I'm not an expert in the tribe, so I'll try my best. And some of my esteemed colleagues probably know a lot more. So I'm glad I'm first, actually. So I wouldn't have much to add to what they have to say. When I'm looking at, I looked at the scholarship on martial arts and using the term tribe. There seems to be very little explicitly using this term, although we know that there are martial arts in certain parts of the world, such as Malaysia and Indonesia, where there are certain groups that identify as tribes that have their own version of certain martial arts. And I know that also in the Philippines, there are certain tribes, such as the Aita people, who have their own form of fighting, although they may not use the term martial arts. So you might first of all think of maybe widening the term to fighting arts and perhaps forms of wrestling. There are a great variety of ways of using the body for combat and from that other purposes. For example, dance. I know some of my colleagues might be talking about the performative aspects of martial arts. At the same time, in other parts of the world, we might use the term sociologists might use the term neo-tribes, like a new tribe, to describe a group where often people voluntarily join. So there's a difference here between a traditional tribe where people are born into a tribe and perhaps are based in a valley or an area, or perhaps even a nomadic tribe, but there's probably not so much a choice to leave the tribe, and they may be there through many generations. And there's the other tribes in, say, the westernized context, so in my country, the UK, where people might join a karate school or a kung fu school and feel like this is their tribe. So they find their tribe and they form a tribe that usually has shared values and practices that they devote themselves to. Okay, so that's sometimes they might refer to themselves as a tribe. So I've come across some karate groups online who are using this term and in a positive manner. Other parts of the world, say Latin America, there might be people you might refer to as tribes, but they themselves would prefer the term indigenous peoples or ethnic groups. So in Mexico, lots of different ethnic groups have their own language and traditions, and they often are historically based in certain parts of the country, particularly the center and the south. So the Zapotecan people, for example, are groups in Chiapas in the south towards central Mexico. But they normally don't often like the term tribe. They prefer to call it indigenous or indigenous groups of people, or etnias, ethnic groups. So it really depends on the part of the world and maybe the history behind that term. It may be because of colonialism. The word tribe might have a negative connotation. So those groups may have their own physical wrestling practices or arts, may just prefer the word ethnic group or indigenous. So those are my main ideas. And then also I made notes on the neo-tribe, thinking that the new tribes, we are free to pick and choose. So for example, I live in Cardiff, so I can join maybe a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu group, for example. And then I said, actually, after a year, this teacher, I don't really like this teacher. I'm going to join another one, or I might try a style of Kung Fu or get back into, say, Tai Chi or something. So there's lots of choice in more cosmopolitan, urbanized context to form a group that you might associate as being a tribe. At the same time, in the world, we know that the real tribes perhaps are being threatened by climate change, for example, urbanization, and maybe the rapid need for modernization in the nation state they all exist in. And perhaps their primary identity as a member of a tribe maybe slowly become secondary after maybe a national identity. So that I think for the younger generations potentially going to be educated in universities and other places, this may change. So I remember meeting one friend who was his parents were Zapotecan from Mexico ethnic group, but he was raised near Mexico City, and he would identify himself as Mexican first, and then his children probably don't really associate themselves with being of a Zapotecan heritage, and so forth. The generations will change over time. So this may have an impact on the tribal identity if they're martial artists that were raised that way. And finally, a final point is that martial arts from a tribe or a fighting system from a tribe may have difficulty being globalized because they possibly in very remote rural areas. So it's great that they have this tradition localized, but most of the martial arts we practice around the world are probably not associated with tribes. So you might think the most popular ones are, for example, karate, taekwondo, judo, which I mentioned earlier, Tai Chi, capoeira is another one, which probably isn't associated with the tribe, but does have some tribal origins. So capoeira, it does have some tribal African origins, but with the transatlantic slavery and movement of peoples, the mass diaspora of African peoples, then they became obviously later Brazilian, as Brazilian state formed. Now it's an Afro-Brazilian martial art, probably quite removed from any tribal identities, as their language and some of their knowledge was lost of cultural ancestry. So martial arts, the final bit, sorry. Normally, tribes and martial arts do have some common themes. One is the interest in history and heritage and their ancestry and respect for their lineage. So many, even say in Chinese martial arts, they use the word family. So the family tree is often seen as the founder or important figure, and then how many generations you are down from that figure. So it could be Ip Man, who's an important figure in Wing Chun, or potentially more semi-mythical founders, Un Moi, and then Yin Wing Chun, the first student of Wing Chun, allegedly, and how many generations you are from them. Okay, so that's also something I think the tribes are very interested in. They want to obviously continue their traditions to the future as well. They think of the next generation. So those are some, again, crossovers between the areas. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you very much, sir, for sharing your insightful observations. Now, I would request Dr. Mark James Hamilton to share his insights. Sir, the digital floor is all yours.
So I think I'm going to begin with talking about the Maori context here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, because it will probably inflect my input most particularly. Whereas we're hearing there from George about contexts in which the word tribe may be disputed or discussed, we do have here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, very strong tribal cultural identities. So to use the indigenous terms, we talk about hapu for extended family groups, which mount to hundreds, thousands potentially, and then iwi for the very large groupings, which that terminology is somewhat disputed because it's a little bit to do with a dialogue with the colonial occupation of the land. But essentially, we are talking here about a context in which tribal identity is paramount to an indigenous cultural a person is known here in an indigenous context through their belonging. And in relationship to this, the martial practices, or tutawa, as the arts of warfare were termed in Te Reo Māori traditional language, have become integrated in a performative tradition called kapa haka, which means group haka. But we're referring there not just to the sort of the display of physicality that you might be familiar with from some sporting groups, but we're talking about a whole collection of martial practices and preparatory practices for martial training, such as poi, which are large balls which swing on strings, and they're used to prepare the wrists of a martial artist to be strong enough and resilient enough for their use of very unflexible weapons, stone weapons included. So that's, oh, we have a doorbell. So that's gives you context for the way in which the martial arts enter into a tribal continuum here, and that even extends into lineage, being the term whakapapa used within Te Reo Māori to refer to the origin of all practices. There's always a very distinct line of origin. But what we can add to this, though, is that we're not necessarily talking just about tribal identities connected to pre-colonial times or to preservation of belonging in that respect. We're also talking about a tribal identity in a modern context where the three of the largest corporate entities in New Zealand in the financial sector are tribal organizations who've invested their resources to raise to that kind of stature. So that gives us a different inflection on what a tribe is in perhaps in some other contexts, maybe comparative to some of the tribes in the United States of America, Native American communities that have flourished in certain respects. But we also have new groupings emerging through this performance of the martial arts in the tradition of kapa haka. In the urban areas, groups gather which may compose of a variety of genealogical origins, but they come together in a new performing identity, and that in itself becomes a strong tribal belonging, because you may, for some of these groupings, have existed now for 60, 70 years. So whilst they're inter-tribal by traditional definitions, generations have belonged to the same grouping, and their lives revolve around the cycle of that performance calendar, which lasts over a 2-year cycle nationally. So that gives us a sense about how the martial arts really live in a modern, current tribal context in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And I was thinking I'd need to be sort of put out the front here that my work with the research and my practical explorations of martial form in Kerala wouldn't be able to, in ethnographic terms, be said to have entered the tribal sector in terms of Adivasi communities that are recognized by the Indian government as tribal. But what I would say is that I identify, and I've been reading again recently, that the caste community belonging that was so prevalent in Kerala prior to the modern era is still very strong. and Kalari, in a certain sense, still belongs to the Naya community, one of the higher, so-called higher caste communities. And my research involved exploration of a variety of outsiders from Kerala involving themselves in, mainly women choreographers from the north.
Okay. Sir, you're not audible.
Sir, you're not audible.
Mark,
Sir,
we can't hear you.
Mark,
So-
we can't hear you.
Sorry, did you lose me? Can you hear me now?
yes, yes, audible.
Uh, where did you lose me?
Now you're talking about the Nair community and then about
Okay.
Kerala.
Yeah. So what I was saying was I've been pondering by looking at the way in which Kalari Payat, or forms of the Kalari, are intrinsic to, for example, the preparatory techniques of the Teyam, which is traditionally a lower caste community practice of performing and taking on the presence of the deities. You see elements of the Kalari Payat present in their training practices, as also in the Kathakali, which so I begin to wonder if we can see Kalari Payat as not necessarily belonging to particular tribes within Kerala, but having been positioned as belonging to particular communities, and having almost been requisitioned a little bit in the modern era, and maybe we see a systemizing of our definitions of these forms, which suggests some really suggests a more delineated sense of what belongs where than we may have seen in previous eras. So it may be that through the modernization of the states and the acquisition of certain social power, there's a possession of the form starts to happen. But I think that's something I'd like to talk about longer when we go further in.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your valuable observations. Now, I would like to request Dr. Shaktipada Kumar to share his insights. Sir, your turn now.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, 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 you are.
Okay. First of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity, and I'm extremely happy. Because of the topic, which is ethnography of martial arts, traditions and rituals of the tribe. Why I'm specifically giving emphasis on the title, because most of the time when we talk about a particular performance, we tend to forget about the traditions and rituals behind any kind of performance. For example, I'll be talking largely and greatly on one of the very popular martial art forms, Chou dance in Purulia, West Bengal. And when if I look at the works that have been done on Chou dance, mostly they have focused on the performance only, and they have ignored the context, which are various kinds of the rituals which take place before the performances. So in my experiences, I have seen that without this context, without these rituals, without these traditions, the performance is nothing. Performance is the later part, and the ritual is something which takes place in the first place. So and this I have noticed while doing research on show performances, which is a very acrobatic sort of dance form. Yeah, and I'll show you some of the clips. And it is absolutely important to record the rituals behind any kind of performances, because ritual is also a kind of performances in my opinion. Because but there is a very slight difference between ritual and performances. Ritual, I'll call that ritual is actually a kind of performer oriented performance where the audience is not required. But when we are talking about performance, performance is obviously the audience centric, audience oriented. So when I'm talking about show dance, show performance, then it is absolutely audience oriented. So if there is no audience, there cannot be show performances. But for the rituals which are associated to show dance, for those rituals we do not require any audience, but there may be audience. And show have, I mean, three different kinds of styles, three different forms. One is in West Bengal, the other one is in Jharkhand, and the another one is in Mayurbhanj. And I will be largely talking about Purulia Chou and how this particular performance is taking shape, and how the people of Purulia and the performers actually, without getting any kind of training, how they are learning is extremely important. So before we, move on to talk about the performance part, before we talk, we should also not, we should also document the rituals. And I'll be sharing my screen for the better understanding of these performances. A very small clip. It is actually part of my documentary film, which I have made when I was doing my PhD. And for this, I took almost, 5 to 7 years in order to record the entire performative traditions. Because in order to understand a performance, we need to understand the context. Because these performances are very context sensitive. If I use the word of A.K. Ramanujan, these are very context sensitive things. So until and unless we know the context, it is. I think it is very. It's a sort of futile attempt to understand a performance. So let me share my screen. Or Ganjan festival has a close association with the movement of the sun. One of the purposes of the mythical and ritualistic celebration aims to bring rain to save beings from the scorching heat waves. This is one of the objectives of the celebration. But there are several other things associated with Ganjan festival. In the course of the ritual celebrations, something else takes place which is more significant and requires elaborate analysis on these less focused aspect of the ritual celebration. Chaitra Parab is considered as the source and origin of the Chou dance. This is the most plausible and widely accepted source of the Chou dance. The actual timing of the Chou performance is still the Chaitra Parab. Bhogta Loton, rolling bodies to enact the memories of the tradition. The word Bhogta comes from the Bengali word Bhokta, which comes from the Sanskrit word Bhakt, meaning devotee. Devotees of Lord Shiva during the Chaitra festival are the central part of the celebration. Bhogta Loton is the ritual occasion when all the devotees take a bath in the pond and from a certain distance. This distance varies from village to village, but roughly the distance would be 500 to 800 meters and sometimes more. They start rolling their bodies on the mud earth to reach the temple. Some 200 devotees roll their bodies together and proceed toward the temple, and once they enter the temple area, they circumambulate the temple by rolling their bodies. Bhogta Ghura. The devotees get pierced with two sharp hooks So these are some of the, I mean, rituals associated with show performance. There are many such rituals associated with show dance, because and I personally feel that this, I mean, to discuss about these rituals are, I mean, extremely important, because most of the time we just get to know about the performance, and we ignore the ritual part. Now, if I talk about the movements of show performances, and how the children in Purulia, they learn show performance is extremely a kind of new sort of, I mean, experience, because there is no guru, there is no teacher, there is no training when the children learn, and how the childrens, they actually take up this dance form, how do they, I mean, get into the performance is a very significant aspect. And you will see that there are many stages through which the children learn show performances. So it is not just a matter of, so it takes long time. It takes I mean, long time uh, to become a show performer. I will play another part from my documentary that will show you how the show performers, they how the children, they learn their performances, and they learn in a very jolly way, in a very, I mean, uh, light-hearted way. The incarnation of Kartika, who are locally known as Choto Kartik or Kancha Kartik, Junior Kartika, perform various types of acrobatic movements. These acrobatic movements attract the children who try to learn these movements when they take a bath in the pond or when they play a game. There is a separate world of children's show who do not require any guru and learn on their own after watching the show performance in a village festival. How do the children learn the basic movements of the show dance can be seen through the videos. The relation between war and dance is very ancient in the Natya tradition and has the evidence in Bharata's Natya Shastra. There are hundreds of episodes in the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, Puranas, and Vedas, but not all the evidence get incorporated into Chhau dance tradition. The selection of Chhau Pala always depends upon the theme of the war. Why does the theme of war become so crucial in the Chhau tradition? The theme of the performance, which forms the Natya part of the Chhau Nritya Natya, can be categorized into two sections, the heroic pala and the non-heroic palas. Although most of the Chhau palas are focused on war and valor and in acts of killing, there are, however, palas that are free from these predominant themes of which there is a little awareness outside Purulia due to the representation of this dance as only exhibiting virata. Chhau dance is not just showing heroism, it has other rasas as well. Various sthai bhavas which evoke different. Okay, so yeah. So this is how, I mean, the children, they learn show performances. They learn each and every movement in show performances. But if you look at, since we are talking about the ethnography in martial arts, so if we notice, I mean, the songs used in show performances, because show is a kind of dance drama, nritya natya. So if you notice the song part in show performances, then we will see that the people, they are not just talking about, they are not just taking stories, they are not just taking plots from the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, but they're also, I mean talking about their own lives. They're talking about their own stories. They're talking about their own heroes. So I mean their local life is actually mixed with the Puranic, Itihasic, and themes like this. And uh, if you notice the beginning part of any show performances, then we will see that there is a particular kind of song which we locally call, it is part of the Jhumur song genre. That's the name of the genre, Jhumur. And in Jhumur song, you will find that the people are actually talking about each and every character used in the performance, and they're also talking about their own life, how they are treated in the stage. How I mean, most of the time, people of Purulia, they have seen that their art form is considered as a kind of low sort of art form, and the people also face discrimination, and this I mean as they are facing discrimination, they are protesting in a different way by composing songs, by composing various kinds of pala, various kinds of show episodes, various kinds of songs. So such kind of songs, such kind of ethnographic elements we will see in the Jhumur song, which are part of this performance. So with such a song, as I am directly connected to this performance, and I manage a team. I have a show team. So I'll be ending my lecture with such a song, which will talk about how the people of Purulia, how the show performers, they feel when they actually come in contact with the people of the urban areas. So this is a kind of song which is composed by one of my friends. So I'll give one or two lines from that song, and that would be my sort of conclusion. So in a way, I am ending the way Chow dance actually begins. So Chow dance begins with a song, and I am ending my insight, my observations about Chow through this kind of songs. Uh, the song is in Bengali. I'll try to give you the meaning in English later. তবে হাইরে পুরুলা রে সত মায়ের ছা জনম লেলা বাবু ভাই আই করে দূর দূর ভিনু আমাদের গাথের রং আর ভিনু চলা বলার ঢং ভিনু ভাষা ভিনু মোদের সুর তবে শিক্ষিকর নাগপুর আর ছাড়ে যাবে যতই দূর এই রং কোথাও পাবি না তবে ছৌ ঝুমরের কি যে রস আর দেশ বিদেশ হয়েছে বস এইটাই আমরা চিনহাইছি সবাই so the last line এইটাই আমরা চিনহাইছি সবাই so this makes our identity we are known to the world because of our performances like this so the song basically says about that the people of Purulia they have a different kind of accents they have a different kind of body complexion their language is different their culture is different so such kinds of songs we can see in the performances. There are various other there are various songs which are also part of this performance. So that's it. Thank you all for your patience. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That was beautiful, the song as well as the visual representation. We got like a very fair idea about what show dance performances and their precursing rituals are. Okay, so while moving ahead, I'd also like to invite and request Dr. Ramakrishna Biswal to share his insights. Sir, over to you.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
I was listening to George, Mark, and Shaktipada on their ideas and research, as well as some of the performances of martial arts. Though this is a topic on martial arts, I would little debate from this topic in talking more about the identity and culture of the tribal, how we conceptualize the identity of the tribal, because identity has its direct connections with development. That we think that development is like you become mainstreamed. But what is the meaning of mainstreaming? Are they not mainstreamed in themselves? So who is in the mainstream? That's the biggest question. In the Sustainable Development Goals, we have been thinking of the problems that we face on a daily basis. But there are solutions available with the tribal communities that we never explore. We think that they can provide us solutions. They have a different kind of culture altogether, so they may not merge, they may not provide the kind of issues that we are grappling with. But this is not true. Why? Because I used to visit tribal places. Currently, also, I am in a tribal conclave. I have found some time to be here for this discussion. We have been discussing this for some couple of years. I have been working from 2002 on the tribal issues when I first went to a place in Odisha, that is called KBK district, Koraput, Balangir, and Kalahandi district, which was known for the starvation rate and everything. But that's the story that we used to listen from the media, which is not all the time correct. One has to understand the reality from the grounds. And while my visit to those places, I found that there are teachers who are exceptionally brilliant in the tribal regions, but we never consider them as good teachers because they are not in any competition to prove themselves that they are best teachers. That's what is one of the interesting things that attracted me to do some more work in the tribal regions. When you talk about the uh, tribal identity, it also talks about the food, the culture in terms of food as a culture, language as a culture. What is culture? Culture is amalgamation of everything that we represent our identity. So when we think about food, we in the cities we go for food which is polished, which is looking nice to eyes. That's good food. But tribal, they do not understand that that polished, refined things are good. They used to have the raw food as it is. They collect it from the forest, they eat it the way they know the best, and through that they get the nutrition. But in the name of nutrition, we are marketing the products in a different with a different name, the same products, and we try to capture the market that the tribals would get. And through this we say that this is what is development. Now we are also talking about skill development among the tribal. What skills do we have that they do not have? Now we saw the Purulia Chow dance. Without a teacher, they learn so many things. We need teachers, but we are not able to learn things in a proper way. So it is integrated in the culture. Any learning, any teaching should be integrated in the culture. We should have a four-wall boundary that is called school to teach something. Teaching and learning is a byproduct of the cultural practices. Understanding that would help us to understand them better, rather than asking them, come and be like us. We must ask them, be like yourselves, and we would like to learn something from you. So that should be the idea of understanding tribal identity and tribal culture. With this, I would also like to highlight on some of the research that I have done on mental health and dropout among school children in the tribal regions, because we do not have a teacher who is trained in tribal language. Even if the teacher is trained, we do not have textbooks available in their language so that they can at least complete the primary level of education. So this is one of the major hurdles. Second is geographically they are not close to the cities. So many teachers who are posted in the tribal regions, they do not like to go there. So the children do not get education. And when it comes to health, they have their own system of health. Uh, my understanding is that their administration, their system is already working. We are intervening unnecessarily at times without understanding what the system is. So, our too much of intervention is not good for their development. Rather, we are interrupting the development process. I have given one of my models of healing when they suffer from mental illness. There, I have talked about this multiple centers of healing or eclectic healing model. When they have a strong belief in something, as we have seen just before, uh, their beliefs cure. And in mental illness, your beliefs are the major elements for cure. So if I want to break that belief, I am not able to be going to be successful in healing people suffering from mental illness. I must try to integrate, I must try to understand, and then gradually I might say which is not harmful. But what we do in terms of healing, in terms of any kind of intervention, we exactly put whatever thoughts we have in our mind. We do not consider them. As an outsider, they also do not accept us, because we never stayed with them. We have never spent time with them. Even if we spend time with them, we can never be like them. So, in order to understand tribal identity and culture, our ideas of development must change. The ideas of development is that we must be like them, then we can understand them better than we keep our lenses and try to make them like ours. So that is my idea of development.
Thank you, sir, for your thoughts, and very interesting thoughts they are. Very fundamental also. So, moving on, we will now transition to the engaging question and answer session. We begin with the first panelist, Dr. George Jennings. So, I would like to put this question that in the context of ethnographic research and with special regard to your work on changing forms of ethnography, how do the traditions and rituals associated with tribal martial arts reflect the cultural values, historical legacies, and social dynamics within the communities?
Okay, thanks. Really great question. I think the chapter I wrote on changing forms of ethnography was about the strategies used to study a given martial art over a long period of time. So you could adapt maybe a participatory lens or a perspective to get involved in the group from the kind of insider's perspective as a beginner, immerse yourself in the culture, and that may help you understand the traditions, the history. But you could also later step back and look more at the documents or any kind of documentation, historical archives. Potentially now, if the groups of martial arts have representation online, you might be able to look at social media. So all these strategies, it might be more of kind of a net ethnography. So this is an online ethnography. So you could use this kind of strategy. You also might embed a life history design. So it's where you're going into biographical interviews. So these types of ethnography or social science or qualitative research methods can help you tackle different questions. And you might use different theoretical frameworks for each of those parts of the study as well. So it may be one might be more about the body and how it feels and the sense of embodiment, so living and moving inside the body. And you perhaps using more kind of phenomenology, which is a branch of philosophy or applied philosophy. Or others might be focusing on the linguistic aspects of the martial art, the meanings behind the terms. So you may need to do some kind of aspects of sociolinguistics. And others may be looking at historical long-term shifts. You may be using some social theory or historical frameworks. So basically, that relates to some of the writing I've written on the research methods and designs of martial arts. Sorry if I didn't quite answer your question directly, but it's kind of how I read it at the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for paving the way towards the discussion of tribal martial arts, how it evolved as a means of cultural preservation. So we begin and again go to Dr. Mark James Hamilton, drawing from your expertise in martial dance theatre. How do the rituals and ceremonial aspects of tribal martial arts reflect the interplay between performing arts, spiritual beliefs, and community rituals?
Well, it's a very tried and tested area of discussion in the performance studies world to talk about performativity. And I think just to give that some lineage, Judith Butler develops that concept in her discussion of gender, and she draws it from discussions of grammatical structures. But when it comes into our field of performance studies, we're talking about the fact that it's by the doing of something that some things come into being. So that's a bit elliptical. But if I put it this way, we might say that the martial arts as practices which do integrate spirituality, community ritual, and these more institutional presentations of the form, which we might recognize as performance, they are all means by which identity of the community is brought into being, and if we extend that to a further degree, sovereignty. But you might also say that it's only through the doing that identity is developed and brought into existence. So it's not so much that we might say the martial arts or any performance practice, live real-time behaviors are expressing or communicating or broadcasting an identity or a belonging or a sovereignty in the biggest scale, but they are actually creating it. And I think I would just take that analogy in terms of the martial arts in New Zealand, Aotearoa, where the practice of kapa haka clearly is a context in which the martial practice is maintained and sustained in a way that it hasn't existed in combat for many, many years. And so in a sense that the tribal identity of the community is articulated through the doing of those staged performances now. And equally, just to finish on this topic, I'd say that we wouldn't want to imagine either that these performative practices are expressing beliefs that could be separated from the practice, or understandings or knowing that exist previously and then they're expressed in the martial art. But I'd say that the martial art is giving rise to knowledge and belief and perception that we could describe as spiritual or in many different ways, but it's originating in the practice. So to summarize, I'd say I'm suggesting that the doing of the martial practices is the development of identity and also the development of knowledge rather than representations of them.
Oh, you're muted, Angana.
Sorry. Thank you, sir.
Muted again. Sorry.
What's happening? Okay, now am I audible? I think. Okay, fine. So thank you, sir, for walking us through the rich tapestry of doing art and performativity. Now we move on to our third panelist, Dr. Shaktipada Kumar. There are many ritualistic cultural traditions that you discussed in your works, like the Jungle Mahal, in one of your research articles. How can the integration of performance studies and cultural preservation efforts enhance the visibility and understanding of tribal martial arts as living cultural traditions?
Well, okay. That's a very, significant question, and I strongly believe that interdisciplinary approaches can help revitalizing and disseminating the knowledge of martial arts. But it cannot just do academically. In order to revitalize and rejuvenate such martial arts, we should focus on the traditions and help the guardians of such cultural memories to continue these age-old practices. In a way, we can encourage, acknowledge, and support in, whatever ways we can. While such cultural heritage performances are taking place seasonally, so communities involved in such cultural activities must be protected and safeguarded. So, if our approach is only academic, then we may not protect, we may not rejuvenate these cultural practices. So, what we have to do, we have to encourage them, we have to acknowledge them, we have to recognize their cultural practices. And when this is happening in seasonal, in season, because show is a performance that takes place in a particular time of the year, so there is a traditional timing of these performances. Not, now these are happening, these are show is performed throughout the year, but there is a traditional timing, there is a particular timing in the academic, in the calendar when show performance actually takes place. So that time is the mid April. So my idea would be to help them continue these usual practices. Uh, when it's happening, when it's happening in the traditional time. So that would be my response to your question.
Thank you, sir, for disseminating the very imbued heritage of following a particular pattern, not through academia only. Okay, so we move on to our fourth panelist and ask him, your works have contributed significantly to the sector of tribal education. Where do you locate the chief causes and consequences of dropouts in primary and secondary education with respect to the study of scheduled tribe children in Orissa, India?
Thank you. Regarding this dropout in the tribal areas in Odisha, we found that most of the tribal children do drop out by the time, mostly girls, they attain Menarche. Uh, because the school is farther away from the uh, home, and parents don't feel safer to send their girl child to school. That's one reason. There are child marriages still happening. There are also some, in some cases, they are uh, being sexually harassed by uh, the teachers at times, sometimes school staff, or maybe somebody on the way to the school. So these are the major reasons for which many tribal girl child, they do not get education. Of course, they can't complete primary education also. In addition to that, the language in which they are being taught, that's incomprehensible for them. So they often find it difficult or often find it disinteresting to engage in the classroom things. And the teachers' perception also matter. Many teachers who are posted in the tribal regions, they think that these tribal children can't do better. With that perception, they do go to the classroom and teach. So you are not involved, you don't feel involved, you don't feel teaching the kids. So that makes a distance between the child and the teacher. Another reason is they also do not give any kind of training which would make them employable. Even if they have education till primary, what will they do after that? Because for higher education, they have to go farther away. It is not available in the nearby area. So why would they send their kids to a distance where there is no output from this education? So kind of skill or vocational training is lacking in the primary education itself. They have traditionally been trained to collect some forest produce. If they could be trained like collecting honey, collecting leaves, and making something out of those leaves, they need some foundational literacy and numeracy skill to make their livelihood. But this is going to be sidelined. Only the syllabus completion and every other things are going on. And there is another system, is that you pass everyone, even if they do not have the knowledge, even if they do not have the skill. Just passing classes, that also is not helping them. And there is a perception in the community that my child has learned till 5th standard, he or she is not willing to work with me because he is saying that I am educated enough. This is also uh, uh, doing some kind of harm in the education, and they do drop out. Now the solutions could be how to integrate their cultural things so that they needn't have to migrate to a different place and find jobs over there for the livelihood. Their needs are not very I mean, big like people living in the cities. They have limited needs. And with that kind of education and the available resources that they have, they can manage themselves well. So our policymakers must think in a direction that will settle these people over there peacefully, rather than coming to the cities, migrating to the cities, and uh, taking another burden of this cultural shock in the cities. So that should be somehow balanced. Like whoever would like to get education, they are welcome, but we shouldn't drag them to the cities to make them come and be a part of the mainstream.
Thank you, sir, for throwing light to the causal aspects of dropouts. Now, due to time constraints, I think we need to wind up. Okay, and so your arguments were very well rounded and well informed. So, as we draw the curtains on today's session, my sincere appreciation goes out to each of our esteemed panelists for offering invaluable insights on the discussed topic. Before we part ways, a friendly reminder that we are calling for submissions centered around tribal literature and tribal art representation in art, the details of which can be viewed on www.tellmeastory.biz. So we will come back to you soon with another engaging panel discussion under the project. Until then, I extend my wishes for a pleasant evening to everyone. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thanks.